We're going to Tom Lemming. You can connect with Tom on the Twitter account at Lemming Report. He's the co-host of the Lemming Report on CBSSports.com. We know him certainly as the Bible of recruiting. Tom Lemming, welcome back to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I hope you're doing well, sir.
Yeah, I'm hanging in there. I'm out in New York right now, getting everything kind of ready for signing day.
Big day. Kind of a celebrate and to end one recruiting cycle and then opening up another one that will be quite large as well.
Yeah, you know what? This year it's a bit different since about 80% of the ball players had already signed in December. So not quite as many guys out there. It's been kind of fun watching how the players that didn't sign have raised, and their stock has really risen because there's so many people coming after them. It's such a small talent pool as opposed to past signing days that the 3 stars have now become superstars, and the 4 stars are just out of this world. So it's kind of fun to watch these guys. Everybody kind of fawn over them and just do whatever it takes to try to land them.
Well, Tom, when you go back and you think about the amount of pressure, if you're one of the guys that is left, as you talked about, could you imagine the phone calls and the text message? Because you get that much more attention. You're now getting peppered with all the coaches coming after you because they've got a certain part of the class locked up, and you become even a higher commodity.
Oh, without a doubt. That's what I've been saying. I think a lot of the ball players, there are a lot of good ones still out there, but I think they're being even priced a little bit higher normally than they have been the past few months, just because there's so few out there. And so many of the big-name ball players had already signed in December, which was a bit of a surprise to me and a lot of other people. I thought the big-name guys would take all 5 visits and go, but it didn't happen. The majority of the ball players are committed or signed, and so there are some good ball players still left, but a lot of the players that were sort of borderline to a lot of schools have now become well above borderline because they're just fighting to fill out the rosters. So a lot of people have offered them when they normally would not have offered these players.
Let me ask you where Patrick Surtain would rank as far as the top players that you've seen this year.
He's my number 3 guy in the entire country. Pat Surtain is just like his father, who was an all-pro. He's got the length, he's got the quick feet, the hands, the confidence, and the terrific overall athletic skills to be an impact player as a true freshman. I'd be surprised if he wasn't. I think he's a guy that'll be a 3-and-out guy in college and be a number 1 draft choice in 3 years if he stays healthy. He's that talented, and you know, like everybody in the country also.
Tom, I think we lost you there.
Oh.
Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we missed the last few seconds there. I'm sorry.
Oh, I just said I think Pat has the ability to be an impact player as a true freshman. And that's why everybody in the country's gone after him. And he's had so many major schools, sell their souls to land him. I think it'll probably be either LSU or Alabama that'll probably eventually wind up with him.
Let me ask you about his teammate there at American Heritage, Tyson Campbell. How close are they as far as skill set? Pretty
close. That's why it's such a tremendous defensive backfield. They had a guy graduate last year. Part of it was real good ball player. Tyson Campbell's almost identical size-wise and athletic ability-wise. I like Pat a little bit more. I think he's got a little bit more of that oomph to him, but Campbell's also a big-name ball player, and I think he benefited from having Surtain in the same backfield. Most people stayed away from Pat. That's why his stats were pretty pedestrian this year. He had very few passes thrown his way. I think most people realize that, and then I think his dad moved him to the middle of the field for a while to try to get him more into the action.
Who is your number 1 and number 2 player that is in front of Patrick Surtain?
Trevor Lawrence, quarterback who signed with Clemson, is number 1, and he's been my number 1 for 2 years now. I just thought he was an exceptionally gifted quarterback. You'll see him in the NFL someday, and then Xavier Thomas, the defensive end who I first met in Florence, South Carolina, and then I've seen him the last couple of years down at IMG Academy, and he's a relentless. You don't find too many 6'4", 260 pounders that can run a 4.5 40, but that's exactly what Xavier does. And guess what? He's going to Clemson also. So Clemson gets the top 2 players in the country.
I'm not very good at this guy's first name, but Anoma, there from St. Francis Academy that is signed with Alabama. Where does he rank on your board?
He's in my top 15 right now. He was the highest raised guy I've had for our January magazine in a long time. Because, and it's funny, is his coaches are good friends of mine. I'm actually having lunch with them on Friday, Bill McGregor and Biff Poggi, and they were telling me about him. He came out to my get-together last February when I had it at DeMassa High School, and the coaches are saying, Tom, you're going to be writing an awful lot about him. Then they sent me the film. I met him, and he's thin-looking at his 235 pounds. Then you watch him on film, and he's like lightning to the ball. He's a terrific talent. I was shocked at, and he's almost 6'6", so he's got the length, the long arms, quick feet, and then he's got the 22 sacks this year. He was the Baltimore Defensive Player of the Year and well-deserved. So they did a great job developing over the past year, and gained 15 pounds since last year, and once he gains another 20 pounds, we're going to be talking about an All-American. This is an impact ball player, and it pays to do the work, because I do know that the coaching staff very close to Nick Saban at St. Francis. They used to be at Gilman High School. Saban would always come over, talk to them, spend time with them, and let the coaching staff go to Alabama. And I think in the long run that pays off big dividends. Saban's the best at that.
Let me ask you about Jalen Waddell there at Bel Air, Texas. What do you see in this young man? What does he bring to a school? And obviously he's high on Alabama's radar.
Jalen is a ball player. He was on the cover of last year's magazine with all the other top players from the Houston area when he was only a junior. And then this year I went back to see him again. He's got real good hands. He's got decent size. He's got terrific vision and balance. And he could catch the deep ball over either shoulder when you watch him on film. He's a deep ball threat. And I've always liked him that way. And I knew he was a big-time four-star ball player for the past couple of years. He's a legit game-breaking type wide receiver, can run 700 meters.
Tom, how does your process work? Can you walk us through how do you do this when you go through the ranking process? Because I know you're one of the guys that likes to go and get on the road, see the eyes, let the eye test sort of pass that. How do you walk through your rankings and you compile all this data? Yeah, and I think, to my knowledge, I'm the only guy that does that. It goes around and looks at everybody in person. I think the rest of them rely more on the college scouting system that they let the players know. That's why I try to rank ball players, give them 4 or 5 stars before the colleges have gotten to them, instead of waiting to see who many offers them. Because I try to. Sometimes you make mistakes, but it's best to do it that way. In October, it'll be my 40th year doing this, and I've collected a lot of friends and people that I count on: high school coaches, college coaches, sports writers that I'll use a collective opinion before I get into each area. Like this past weekend, I was in the Baltimore, Lower Maryland area, so I had the top 72 underclassmen meet. We talked to them. I'd already seen most of them on film, but there's a good 20 of them that I didn't see on film yet, and they surprised me. Like St. John's High School's got 3 freshmen that Alabama and everybody else is going to be offering in another year or two. So I like to jump on these guys and give them their ratings before the internet sites do. That's why it pays to go on the road. It's not an easy thing to do. I've been on this trip now 5.5 weeks. I still got 1 more week to go before I get home. But you do. To me, it's the only way to do it. I know that's how the NFL does it. They send their people out to look at the ball players, talk to them, and then watch film. And the way I rank ball players is not just athletic ability, but also you sit down with them and you determine what kind of heart they have for that particular sport, which is football. Do they love the sport? Will they go to great lengths to be the best player around and all that, or are they just using it as a means to an end for an education, which some players, and rightly so, you do. So I think that comes into play. If you got the heart, you've got the size that fits that position, and you got the physical ability and most of all production, then you're going to get a high ranking by me. Tom, let me ask you, Alabama choosing not to go with a scholarship quarterback in this class. Brevin White was a guy that chose to go to Princeton. They backed off some other guys as well. They did take Jay Barker's son as far as an invited walk-on. But when you look at not choosing a quarterback, this kind of goes against the Nick Saban trend of signing a scholarship quarterback every class. You got to throw that trend out the window when you have guys that transfer like Barnett and some of the other ones, and you just take the players. And this year, why take an average quarterback when you can get a couple of great ones next year? You've got
You got Paul Tyson coming up, Bear Bryant's great-grandson, who's got a terrific arm and he had a tremendous junior season. You got Tua's younger brother there at Thompson, who's another big-time ball player, quarterback. So you got two in your own backyard for next year, and who's to say they're not going to go after one of the other great quarterbacks nationally? So bring in two guys next year, I think, and everything, and your depth will be right back at quarterback. So I think it's a smart move. Bringing in a guy now who's just going to be sort of fodder for the first team in practices is not a good decision. So I think they made a smart move.
Hey, Tom, I want to make you a part of the conversation as we're ending this interview. We have been asking the audience, the listeners, to tweet or call in with asking them who is the best high school player they ever saw in person. Now, I know your sample size is quite large. Is there one high school player that you've seen in your 40 years that stands above everybody else?
Yeah, in my first year was Eric Dickerson, John Elway, and Dan Marino. The next year was Reggie White and Herschel Walker. And the year after that was Bo Jackson. So I've seen a lot of them in high school, and I've been doing this. But the best high school football player I've ever seen, and I said this before, was Randy Moss, part of our 1994 class. Back in the 90s, I did a TV show that was on ESPN, and we would fly the top 25 players in the country to Disney World, no game, just to go on rides and then film a 1-hour show. That year, we had two Heisman Trophy winners, Charles Woodson and Ricky Williams. We showed the films, and the oohs and ahs came from everybody. I mean, there's Amon Green, there's so many good Takeo Spike, so many great players in that class. Randy Moss was the best high school player that year, and people were in awe of his play, and I still think that he's the best high school player I've seen. I first saw him as a sophomore. I was watching film with some of the Pitt coaches 2 years while he was a sophomore, and they had told me, forget about the guys in Western Field, go down to Charleston and look at this ball player, and I did. So I saw him each of the next couple of years as a sophomore, junior, and senior, and I told USA Today when he was a sophomore that he was the best high school player I'd seen up to 94 and still is to this day.
Tom, line up what's going to be like tomorrow on CBS Sports Network and there in New York City as the coverage of National Signing Day.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of radio shows, and then on CBS Sports Network we're going to have our Signing Day special with Adam Zipper and myself, and then it's going to be shown, and then it's going to be rerun several times after that. So we'll be taping it tomorrow. Like I said, it's a bit anticlimactic, but only 20% of the guys that no one knows about or not know where they're going. But still, you can get some big-time ball and some big-time news to see what's going on, to see if it's going to be Ohio State, Georgia, or maybe even possibly Alabama winning their 8th in a row as the mythical recruiting title. So it'll be fun to watch.
Do you feel like Alabama's still got a chance, though?
Never know. I never say never with Alabama because for a couple of times, they finished real strong. The problem they have, and I can see why Nick Saban was upset in December, normally they get a lot of guys that turn their way, especially after that great show in the national championship game, but there aren't that many guys that turn their way anymore this year, so it's going to be difficult for them. But like I say never. It'll probably be either Georgia or Ohio State.